Hello friends, welcome to Science 10. Proceeding from the last lecture, we are now in a sequence to discuss the causal arrow of time. So, what is this causal arrow of time? So, to understand the causal arrow of time, we need to understand what we mean by cause and effect in science. So, first point we'll be dealing is cause and effect. To understand what is the cause and its effect, take an example of a ball hanging with the help of a thread. Now, if we cut this with a scissor, as soon as you cut this thread, the ball will start to fall on the ground and finally it will be on the ground. So, cutting the thread is the cause. Cause is cutting the string or the thread. And the effect is falling of the ball. So this is called a cause and its effect in science. Another example may be, for example, the case of a billiard ball in which a ball A strikes an other ball B, and after that they move in any direction. Like A is moving this is the direction of A and B was at rest, and after the collision B is moving in this direction. So there can be many examples. We turn on the switch and the bulb is switched on. So there can be many examples. Like if we consume more amount of salt, then the blood pressure may increase. So taking more amount of salt is like the cause, and its effect is the increase in the blood pressure. It not necessarily be any time, but sometimes. So one remark we can conclude from this is that a cause always precedes the effect. Cause precedes the effect. So there is a kind of sequence in which the effect will always come after the cause. It can never happen that effect comes first and its cause is coming after the effect. So it's not possible. So we can say that there is some sequence in which the effect is coming after the cause. So there is some kind of directionality in this, and this directionality is referred as the causal arrow of time. Whenever we find any event happening, or you will find that there must be a cause and there must be an effect. So there must be the directionality in this, that is, cause is preceding its effect. So the causal arrow is always present in every phenomenon which we are observing in our life. So we can say that causality is intimately bounded with the arrow of time. Now if it's so, then we have some kind of control over the future. So we have some kind of control over the future. This you can understand by this simple experiment in which we are cutting the thread. If you would have not cut the thread, then this ball wouldn't have fallen down. So if we want that in future this ball has to fall, then we will decide to cut. Then we will allow the cows to come into existence, so that we will decide the future. So in some manner we can say that we have some powers to control a future, or it will look like that. So the perception of cause and effect is a consequence of second law of thermodynamics, that is allowing something to happen, that is controlling the future, creates a correlation between the doer and the effect, that is moving in the forward direction of time and not in backward. So we have some kind of control over the future in some of the processes. The understanding of science tells us that science is basically a subject in which we study the causes which result into some effects, and we study the effects and to know from which causes the effect has been produced and what is the extent of the effect. So the main idea of the main purpose or business of science is that to estimate the effects of any cause. So everything in science is all about the causes and its effects. But the interesting thing came with the Scottish philosopher and the proponent of the schools of empiricism, David Hume. Hume said that there is an epistemological problem with the causation, causality, or the causal arrow of time. In science, we observe some phenomena like this and generalize these results to the cases which we encounter in our future. So we get the experience from the past, like this experiment, and apply this experience to the future incidences. So this is called induction. We use it also in mathematics, in philosophy, and in science everywhere. So we apply the concept of induction in finding the results or the effects of a cause. So he said that there is a problem with this way of thinking. Hume said that the inductive reasoning and causality cannot be justified rationally. Rather, they result from a custom mental habit. So let's understand what is meant by perception of cause. Every day we find many events and processes happening around us, and for all the processes, what science says that there must be a cause that is resulting into some effect. So the cause and effect are always present in every process. So now take an example, like we taken the example of a billiard ball. For example, just take that some strange funny thing happens with you, like whenever you sneeze, you find that something falls from the table or a desk, from anywhere something falls. For the first time, it does not look any kind of a strange thing, but for the past 6 months, you are finding that each time you sneeze, you find that something falls. So after the experience of 6 months, you will notice, you will develop a mental construct in which you will find that you will expect something to fall when you are going to sneeze. So actually there is no connection between these two events, that is the event of sneezing and the event of falling of the objects. So there is no actual connection, but you have developed a mental habit. So due to that habit, you will expect something to happen. That is, the cause and effects will seem, the causality, you will find a reason between the events. That is, you will try to connect it like cause and effects. And suppose someday when you again sneeze and nothing falls, then your mental habit will say that there is something wrong. You will now try to understand why the events are not being connected, where the connection has gone. So if this doesn't happen, that is, each time you sneeze, you find something to fall, and suppose that someday when you sneeze and nothing falls, then you will find that there is some problem, why the things are not falling when you are sneezing. So because you have developed a kind of mental construct or mental habit, you will observe that what you are going to expect is not going to happen or not happened. The same kind of habit we have developed in case of mechanical events, like this billiard ball is hitting the another billiard ball, and each time it hits, whether you ask your grandfather or in study in the history or in future, every time you strike a billiard ball, it will always, when this ball strikes the another ball, due to the cause, the effect is, everyone knows what is going to be after the collision. So because from our past experience we have formed a mental habit, and due to that habit we expect the results, and we develop laws of association of the effects. Between the cause and effect, we develop some laws of association. We form some equations like the conservation of momentum or the second law, Newton's second law. So all these laws of association are based on the fact that the cause is affecting, the cause is producing some effect. But Hume is saying that the cause and effect are actually not related. These two events are just, there is no connection between these two events. Actually, this seems to be related, like if you sneeze and something falls, the same kind of analogy applies here. The ball strikes. If you have never seen any ball striking another ball, you would not have seen, you would not have expected that what will be going to happen. So the results of, or the effects of a cause are predicted because of our past experiences, not any law of association that we know. The laws of association are formed only after we experience the phenomena and not before experiencing. If you have never seen any collision, then you will not know what will happen after they collide. So they come into existence only after we form the mental habit. The example of sneezing was only 6 months old, but this kind of examples we saw from our childhood. So we have formed a mental construct or mental habit, but maybe in future they can break. Then on that day we will realize that the laws which we were associating with them was just a false dilemma. That is, we are generating some laws of connections, but actually these two events, the event of striking and the event in which B start to move, these two events are not necessarily connected. We just imagine the connection after we have observed the events. This perception of cause and effect comes into existence by a habit of our mind for constantly conjured events, the events which always occur after one another. And we associate event B with event A because B and A have occurred frequently in nature and not less frequently. They have occurred frequently in time. We associate event B with event A because B and A have occurred frequently and not less frequently in time by some law of association. We apply inductive reasoning from our past experiences to the future incidences by some laws of association because these conjured events occur more rather than less frequently. The strength of association depends on the fact that how frequently these events occur together, and also on the fact that these events resemble each other. That is, like events are more firmly connected. These arguments, Hume concluded that there are basically two inferences that we can draw from our experience. The first is that we already said that cause precedes effect, and the second is that the events of cause and effect are contiguous in space and time. The first conclusion we have already discussed. Now let's come to the second conclusion. So the events of cause and effect are contiguous in space and time. So what does this mean? So you have an event A, which is a cause, and it results into effect, that is event B, which is the effect. Now Hume, it seemed to him that the events occur in discrete manner, that is event A has occurred and then it has finished, and after that the event B has started, and between event A and event B there is some gap, or you can say that there is some empty time. There is some empty time gap in which nothing is happening. Now you can say that how this is possible. So suppose that this is event A and this is event B, and we are representing it by a line. So this is event A and this is event B, and no matter how small you imagine, but there will always be some gap, because if there is no gap, if there is no gap between A and B, then you will have to say that A and B events have occurred together. To understand this, let's come to define what an event or a cause mean. So cause is our event A. So for example, in the first case, when the scissor has started to cut the thread, so each strand of the thread when has been cut, then only it will fall. So you have to satisfy some condition, like take other example of an electrical circuit in which there is a battery, there is a bulb, and you have a switch key. Now the effect is the lightning of this bulb. Now it depends on many conditions. The event of cause is what? That the switch is K is closed, the battery is charged. If the battery is discharged, then it will not glow, and the bulb is not fused, bulb is perfectly okay. So there are for an event to occur, we need to satisfy certain conditions A, B, C, and etc. If these conditions have been satisfied, or they have come into existence together, then event A has occurred, and as soon as the event A has occurred, the event B or the effect will occur. Now if there is no gap between these events A and B, then you will have to assume that event A and B are occurring simultaneously. So what will be the meaning in saying that cause precedes its effect? Even from the language, it seems like the cause has occurred before the effect. Is a priori to effect. Cause is a priori to its effect. So we cannot say that they have occurred together. So there must be some gap, otherwise A and B have to occur at the same time. There must be some gap. So Hume says that causal concept turn out to be a product of an associative mechanism. Mere identification of coincidences, no matter how firm, cannot constitute an explanation. It just allows you to make a prediction. So no matter how many times or for how many years you observe the funny example of sneezing. For example, you observe for last 20 years, each time you sneeze, something falls. So this is a mere incidence or a coincidence, and it cannot confirm that there is some underlying law of association between sneezing and the objects to fall. So basically what physicists or the scientific people are doing, that they are just associating these mere incidences and calling them the laws of association or the laws of physics. There is no valid reason to associate the two events without there is no evident connection between these events. They are just a construct of mental habit. For event A to exist in its completeness, it has to satisfy a set of conditions which we are calling A, B, C and etc. Then suddenly followed by the event B, which all inductive logicians insist that cause precedes the effect, and that is why we tell that the cause always precedes the effect. The complete realization of the conditions included in the cause A, there must intervene an empty time before the effect B enters on the scene. And however momentary or brief this gap is, but it must be there, otherwise cause will not precede the effect. They have to occur simultaneously, and the whole meaning of cause and effect will be destroyed. So as Hume said in his book A Treatise on Human Nature, there is no necessary connection between the events of cause and effect and any events, but it's the human nature to draw a connection between the events and find some reason between the events. And there are various people like scientists who are trying to find the laws of association, and this was the argument of David Hume, and he left no room for any scientific investigation, because there is no necessary causal connection. There is no reason that two events are related to each other. This is the human nature finds that the events are connected because it is just a mental habit. So going further, Hume also explained how then why the events happen in nature, how we can explain these things. If there is no law of association, then how everything works, how people have find the laws of gravity, the laws of mechanics and the different laws of physics and other sciences. So he says that the cause and effect, the connection between cause and effect does not exist. It is just a mental habit, but in the world universal regularities occur. That is, some events must be followed by some other event, and these kind of regularities results into a perception of cause and its effect. So following the school of empiricism, Hume said that there is the only thing which persists in nature is the universal regularities, and he left no room for any scientific investigation to challenge his position. So the various explanation given regarding this, the main point is that the whole idea of Hume is built on the fact that he has supposed that events are, that although time and space are continuous, but the events which happen are discrete in nature. The event A occurs or exists in its completeness by certain conditions, and as soon as the conditions are satisfied, the event B is followed. So the main argument of Hume relies on the fact that the events are discrete in nature. So as A ends, after that there is some time gap, and then B event starts, and that time gap gives you justifies the precedence of cause and effect. So if we imagine that the events are not discrete in nature, then all the processes are continuous in nature, then you will have to assume that as soon as the conditions for event A is satisfied, B is followed and there is no gap, then you will have to assume that if there is no gap, then A and B have occurred together. So the idea of precedence of cause over effect, we have to come over it, and we have to say that cause and effect occur together to challenge the position of David Hume. So this was one of the arguments against Hume position, but after these arguments, the reason for doing science and the basic definition of science has changed. By assuming that events are continuous in nature and not discrete, we can put a counter arguments against the Hume's theory. So by challenging Hume's argument, the basic definition of science has itself changed. From that days to present days, the definition of science has changed. The real and the purpose of science has also changed. The real business of science is not to find a connection between the distinct events. Rather, science has to develop certain mathematical formulation or the formulae based on which we can trace a continuous process and predicts the results. So from those days, we have changed the definition. That is, we are not finding the connection between cause and its effects. Rather, we are not interested in finding the laws of connection. The scientists have to provide or invent general mathematical formulations or the formulae to trace the course of a continuous process. In the present day science, everyone will tell you that why things happens is not a valid question of science. How things happens is a question for science, and the sole business of science is to calculate how the things are going to happen. In the next lecture, we will start with the weak arrow of time. Please like, share the video and subscribe to our channel, and thanks for watching.